Princess Leia hairdo on? Check. Hey everybody, welcome to just a real quick hitter on taking Korg MS-20 EG1 to maybe the next level. If you recall in Lecture 5, we hit up pretty hard how EG1 works with respect to modulation in comparison to EG2. We made a patch. So that was sort of the groundwork for what EG1 can do. What EG1 is most powerful with is delaying the opening of a gate to add motion to a patch. Well, in today's quick hit, I'm going to show you how to utilize EG1 from the MS-20 and integrate that with another patch, a patch from my Matriarch and my Mother 32. I will have 5 oscillators, 5. One of those oscillators will be modulated and affected by EG1 on the Korg MS-20. Why 5 oscillators? Matriarch has 4, isn't that plenty? And heck, the MS-20 has 2. Well, many of you know who Wendy Carlos is, and I was reading some documents recently from Wendy Carlos's past where she talks a little bit about how to really add fullness to a sound. And one of the things she mentions is not 2 oscillators, not 4 oscillators, but 3 or 5, an odd number of oscillators. Gives you that sort of tonic sonic quality that really adds interest to a patch. So I'm playing around a little bit with a piece of music and I'm throwing a 5 oscillator patch at it. Wanted to add some motion, so I threw EG1 in there. I'll show you how I did it, and then maybe you could do the same thing with your next piece. The centerpiece of this patch is the Matriarch. But from the Matriarch, I've plugged in my MS-20, and I'm also mixing in an oscillator from my Mother 32. The MS-20 oscillators are not engaged as part of this patch. Only the 4 oscillators from the Matriarch and the 5th oscillator from the Mother 32. So first steps here, let's just listen to this patch in its entirety, all 5 oscillators. What I've got going on here, obviously a quick little modal, you can hear some aftertouch. I have plugged in linear frequency modulation on the 3rd oscillator, which is hard synced to the 2nd oscillator. For those of you who are Matriarch owners, you'll know what I'm talking about. If you aren't a Matriarch owner, not so important, but the idea is adding more motion, and I can do that with linear frequency modulation, which is an input to the oscillator as an output from the keyboard. What I also then have here is 4 oscillators coming in from the Matriarch and a 5th oscillator that's coming in from the Moog. Let's just listen to that 5th oscillator from the Moog. So I'm going to go ahead and turn all of the Matriarch's oscillators down here. And we'll just listen to the Mother 32. What we're hearing there is a low frequency oscillation, modulation on the Mother 32. It's not sunk to anything. I've got no tempo going on here. It's just a simple low frequency oscillation to that oscillator. It adds that interest in the cutoff as the cutoff sweeps based on the modulation. Yeah? All right, so that's one way of adding motion. Let's go ahead now and turn the Mother 32 down, and let's turn on only what's going on here with oscillator 3. Oscillator 3 then is patched up to the MS-20, and I'll show you exactly how I did that in just a bit. But I want you to listen first. Listen to what it sounds like and watch my finger hit the key. Hear that? And I've on purpose have some release time in the MS-20 to give it sort of that wave feel as it comes in and comes out. The first time I break that gate open though, hear that delay? Let's go ahead and now add that third oscillator with the mother 32 oscillator and have those two work in concert together. So we have the low frequency oscillation from the mother 32 and the delayed gate from the EG1 on the MS-20. Then we can add some of that aftertouch in there. It's so spacey sounding, and I'm working on what my eldest son calls a space opera. So we'll see how it goes. All right, I want to add a little bit more color to it. That was 2 oscillators, and Wendy says 5, right? Wendy says. So let's go ahead and throw 5 of this now. All right. So I'm going to go up and turn up oscillator 1, oscillator 2, oscillator 3 is already on, and oscillator just a touch of oscillator 4. Yeah, about like that. All right. Let's try this again with the whole schmear now, the whole schmear. I think that's pretty cool. All right, let's go ahead now and show you how the MS-20 patch came together. So let's follow the signal chain of oscillator 3. That's the oscillator that is being modulated by EG1 on the MS-20. So wave out, that's the oscillation signal from oscillator 3, is being routed all the way up into the external signal processor on the MS-20. I'm then routing it through the high-pass and low-pass filters on the MS-20 to give me that band pass, to give me the sound I want, the timbre, the characteristic of the sound I want, and to wedge it in to the frequency that mixes well with the other oscillators. It bips out of there and dumps into the voltage control amplifier path on the MS-20, and then from there leaves and dumps back down into a utility on the Matriarch, and we'll talk about that in a second. The idea here, why am I using a voltage control amplifier on the MS-20, is that I do have patched into it then the mod wheel. Now, I did not show any mod wheel modulation of the amplified signal chain through the MS-20, but I could, which means I can then modulate how much of oscillator 3's impact is part of the mix of the 5 oscillators as I'm playing. And I can even by hand, while I'm doing the aftertouch, also modulate how much oscillator 3 comes and goes. That's another way of adding motion. Now the deal down here is this. This CVN, the control voltage in, which eventually then gives us the signal path through to oscillator 3 being dumped back in the mixer. Note that this CVN is coming in from, this control voltage is then coming in from the EG1 on the MS-20. So that delayed, that pause in once triggered, that pause we see before the oscillator 3 comes in, is being completely controlled by EG1. I hit the key, we wait for that delay time. The delay time is expended, the envelope then opens. To trigger, here's the trick. To trigger the MS-20, here I'm triggering it EG1 trigger in. EG1 trigger in, coming on down here to this set of attenuverters. So I have a gate out, keyboard gate out from the back of the Matriarch, and I got a rear view mirror here. Honestly, I do have a rear view mirror. It's from my wife's Subaru, 2005 Subaru, so I can see what's going on in the back of the Matriarch, right? So I put a mirror back there, and now you can see it too. I have a gate out from the keyboard into attenuator 1, and then back into attenuverter 1 and attenuverter 2, which enables me to invert the voltage. Here's the deal. To trigger the MS-20, it has to go from a high voltage to a low voltage to crack open that gate. And you can even see this when you look at what each of the triggers require. The triggers require a signal that goes to ground, that basically goes to 0 volts. That established voltage dropping to 0 volts is what cracks open the trigger and cracks open the gate on the MS-20. To get this instrument to plug and play with other synthesizers, you have to give it a positive to negative voltage drop, and that will trigger open the gate. How do I know this? Well, I played with it, but I also had my handy-dandy digital multimeter. And we've talked about this, I think, in multiple lectures, the importance of having a good DMM to be able to actually be successful with, I think, in my humble opinion, semi-modular synthesizers. I think I talk about the specifications in either, I think it's in lecture 3 or lecture 2 or 4, I forget which lecture it is, but I go into specifying, kind of what kind of DMM you want. About $50, get something decent. All right. So that trigger signal then, that voltage drop, right, is what comes in and triggers EG1 trigger in. And once EG1 trigger in happens, that sets the clock running on envelope generator 1's delay time. And that's why I hit the key and nothing happens for the amount of time we had on the delay. And then that oscillator comes in, and then we hear it. And we hear it in relation to the other oscillators. There are already 4 oscillators going when I hit the keyboard, right? And we hear the mother 32s, that low frequency oscillation, already having some motion. And then EG1 kicks in with the hard synced oscillator 3, and we get that other sort of soaring note that comes through. That's the motion we're talking about. And so finally now, we see this input coming into this last attenuverter and this control voltage here coming out of EG1. So the EG1 control voltage, that delay control voltage, is then being dumped into the signal path of the input signal as we went through the processor, up through the voltage control amplifier, on back down into this attenuverter, and then it is waiting for the signal information, the voltage information from EG1. And when it gets it, it then dumps that into the mix. So that's how the control of EG1, right, controls the voltage that enables that envelope to modify the signal chain on into the mixer. All right, so there it is. 5, count them, 5 oscillators with lots of motion, brought to you by the Korg MS-20's EG1. Now, as always, I offer this stuff to you for your use. Plagiarism is the highest form of flattery, except at a public university, so don't try it there. As always, I will answer any questions you have. Just leave comments. As you guys know, I answer every single question that you comment for any video. And also, if there's other things you want me to poke at, let me know. Feedstock, right? Questions are the feedstock for this channel. Questions are the feedstock for my students as well. If this is the first time you haven't on this lecture, these series of demonstrations and whatnot, hey, HA_DLBAH space YouTube. And there's my channel. Look, I'm not the most prolific of YouTubers, you know, I mean, honestly. But there's also not that many of us. I mean, you go on a subreddit for Moog or for Korg, and there's like 7 or 8 of us. And the entire planet, all right? So there's not that many of us. So, I mean, I don't have to generate a lot of content for us to be impactful, right? But we can stick together. We can stick together. And speaking of sticking together, Ukraine, man, we're with you. I know it's unlikely most of you folks in Ukraine will be able to see this video for any time soon, but we're with you. The world is with you, all right? So peace and love. And that's all I got. We'll talk to you later.